The next day I went to work as I usually did, the amulet safely hidden under my shirt and tie. I went about my daily routine so as not to raise Angelica's suspicions. Then near the end of the day, she came to me and said, "David, it's that time of year again. You need to find a girl." I thought to myself that I'd gone not a moment too soon to see James. She must have already cast the spell, and it seemed the amulet must have worked. The spell I felt sure she had just cast had no effect on me. I could have told her right then to go and get her own damn virgin, but it would have spoiled my plan. So remembering previous years and how I'd responded to this request, I tried to duplicate it. Yes, it is getting to be that time once again, isn't it? Yes, David, I'd like to have a girl ready by New Year's Eve if that's at all possible. We don't want to get caught with our pants down, do we? No, we don't. That just wouldn't do. But I thought to myself, the hunt should prove to be much easier this year. Good then, and good luck with your hunting. She said, "I'm going home now. I'll see you tomorrow bright and early." Okay, have a nice evening, Angelica. Later that night I cruised an area known for prostitution and hunted for the youngest girl I could find. In my expensive car, I didn't have a problem finding willing women. Every time I stopped at a light, one or more would run up to my window and ask me if I wanted a date. But I wasn't getting anywhere this way. None could ever pass for a virgin, so I tried a new tack. When the girls came to my window, I'd say I liked them young. Did they know of any young-looking girls out tonight? I got some funny looks. Some even cast me out for my taste in women, but eventually I found a girl who helped me out. For a $20 bill, she told me where this young girl usually hung out, and that she was probably just what I was looking for. So I went to the corner where the woman had told me, but there was no one there. I circled the block a few times, killing time. Then as I was about to give up for the night, thinking I'd been taken by that whore for a 20, I rounded the corner and saw a young-looking girl just getting out of another car. When the car drove away, I swooped in, and before I knew it, she was in my car. "I'm not cheap," she said, as I pulled away from the curb. "So I hope you brought enough money with you." "Well, how much is enough?" I asked. She seemed to think about this for a moment as she looked around, taking in my luxury sedan, then said, $100 for straight sex. "Anything weird will be extra." "That sounds very reasonable to me," I said, even though I had no intention of paying her anything. "Where do we go to do this?" "I know a little spot not far from here," she said, then directed me to a dark alley. As I entered the darkened alley, to me it seemed it was perfect, secluded and dark. Once we parked, I slipped a hypodermic needle preloaded with a powerful sedative from my coat pocket and quickly stuck it into her thigh before she was ever aware of it. She tried to fight back but was completely ineffective. The drug I'd injected was just too powerful for her to overcome, and within moments she was unconscious. Then I went straight to the old house, just like I'd done with all those unfortunate virgins so many times before. I parked my sedan in the long drive located at the rear of the dwelling. Once I was close to the house, I felt confident all the grossly overgrown landscaping that came up along both sides of the drive and met overhead in the middle more than effectively hid us from being seen by any curious, prying eyes. I got out of my car, went to the passenger side, opened the door and lifted her limp body out, and I carried her to the external basement door. I set her down here. Then I unlocked the huge padlock and lifted the old cellar's double doors up and open. I turned, then picked up my catch and took her into the dark, damp, spider-infested cellar. Upon entering, I reached up and pulled the chain above me, turning on a weak bare single light bulb that hung by its power cord from the ceiling in the center of the dank room. It now swung slowly back and forth, casting harsh shadows into every corner, creating perfect places for the monsters of your imagination to hide and sit patiently waiting for the right moment to attack. I had years before cemented a set of shackles in one corner, and now I placed one securely around each of her ankles, making any idea of her escape all but impossible. Here she would remain while awaiting for Angelina's little return. Every night until then I would bring her food and water. We needed her healthy and alive for the big night. A few days later, when the time came, up in the sky lighting up the nightscape, was a fat full moon. First its light growing dim, then suddenly bright again, then dim once more as it danced among the few wispy clouds floating by on the light midnight breezes. Below this moon, I escorted Angelica to the basement doors of the old house after parking under the cover of the overgrown drive. She was hyped up as usual for what was to come. After entering the dimly lit cellar and turning on the single dim bulb, she looked closely at the girl currently chained to the wall and said, "Isn't she just so young and beautiful? Wherever did you find her?" "Oh, around," I said, purposely being vague. "Oh well, no matter. It's getting later fast, so let's get this party started." Then she pulled from her purse a hypodermic needle filled with the usual powerful sedative, then slowly approached the young prostitute. We had learned quickly to sedate the girls before going further, otherwise it could get very messy. The young prostitute screamed and hollered and tried to get away from that needle, but by now, Angelica had this part down to an art, and in no time, injected the girl. We waited for a few moments as the sedative took effect. Once it had, we unchained the girl and carried her to the other side of the room and laid her on a table very similar to the one the old gypsy had used all those years ago, gutter and all, only Angelica's was much newer than the old gypsy's. Angelica set up all the artifacts used for this ritual, then went to the young girl's side and said some words in a language I still can't place. Then when the moment was right, she expertly slit the girl's throat in such a way the blood flowed smoothly instead of spraying everywhere. We waited while gravity pushed the flow of blood through the gutter system and finally into the waiting ancient silver chalice at the end of the table. Once the CEO was full, Angelica reached out and turned a small valve, stopping the flow of blood. Then she carefully picked up the chalice and holding it above her head, said some more in that unknown language, and with a flourish drank the entire contents of the goblet down in one gulp. I couldn't believe it. How easy it had been to fool her. My plan had worked perfectly. Now I just waited for the results, but nothing seemed to be happening. Shouldn't something be happening? I felt despair begin to envelope me. My plan was not working. Was she aware of my plan somehow? And if so, how did she thwart it? But as panic began to take hold of me, I began to notice that age lines began to slowly form on Angelica's face. Slowly they grew deeper and more pronounced, and then more lines began to appear while her hair became more and more grey and frizzy. I watched in amazement as her bosom suddenly deflated, then dropped several inches. Then I saw her back as it began to curve and hunch over, matching the twisted back of the old gypsy. Angelica wasn't just going back to her actual age, but somewhere far beyond. She was becoming a very old woman right before my eyes. It took her a moment or two to realize what was happening. Once she did, she turned to me, death in her eyes, and cried, "What did you do to me?" "Nothing you didn't deserve," I said, "using me by casting those spells on me, forcing me to assist you with all those horrible crimes. How could you? All for nothing more than simple vanity." Once I uncovered what had been happening to me, I had to make it so you could never kill another innocent virgin ever again. It's been done now and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Her eyes filled with murder and hate as she screamed out, "I'll kill you." Then she ran at me and tried to rake her fingernails savagely across my face, but she was much too weak to be effective. I then shoved her weak body down to the floor quite easily and said loudly, "I hereby officially submit to you my permanent resignation from your employment." And I turned and walked out, leaving Angelica crying weakly to herself on the dirty floor of that old musty cellar located in the belly of that rundown old house. And I never looked back. Now the rest is what I later learned from a private detective I hired to keep tabs on her, because even though I truly believed with all my being that she would likely never see that old gypsy woman ever again, but I must be vigilant and know if this nightmare were to actually happen again so I could stop her. But thankfully this never happened. I was told that at first Angelica tried to find the old gypsy, hoping to somehow reverse what I had done, but the old woman was nowhere to be found. Her shop was deserted as if she had never been there. So being unable to reverse the spell and seeing no other alternative, she had tried her hand several different times at various suicide attempts. But it seemed there was something about the old gypsy's ritual that somehow prevented her from completing a successful suicide. And to make matters worse for Angelica, I was told that every night, after the light has been chased away by the coming of night, as that same old moon rose slowly into the dark evening sky, she is haunted by all her slaughtered victims. Every night she is forced to hear their ghostly wailing and cries from the young lives that were all cut short due to that unchecked vanity. And all this without any of the beauty she had coveted for so long. I never went back to the company again after that night. I just quietly left and moved to this small town in the neighboring state where I have lived alone all these many years, alone in this modest 2-bedroom house. I had once wanted to be successful at any cost, and Angelica wanted her youth, also at any cost, but we both learned that what we want can sometimes skew our minds and turn us into monsters. I've never felt good about my part in killing that prostitute, not to mention all those virgins, but I figured one more life sacrifice now to end it all, as compared to the many more lives of innocent virgins over the coming years. I pray every night before I go to bed for forgiveness, and every night I am haunted by those deeds she had forced me to do. But now that I've finally revealed all of these dark, long-kept secrets to the world, maybe now I'll finally find that peace I've longed for. At least I hope I do.